Good evening, friends. Welcome to this teleconferencing session on post-industrial society. You have read about this in your BSHF 101, Block 1, Unit 4, the post-industrial society. You are broadly familiar with the contours of the argument. Let me just remind you that in this unit we discussed this whole transition from the industrial society to the post-industrial society. We basically discussed how there was a shift in the Western societies from Western societies to some kind of from some heavily manufacture-based to a service sector based society, where the proportion of industrial proletariat fell to about 15% of the total workforce, and the proportion of agriculture also goes down. Agricultural workforce also goes down. Now, in this society, which we told you was basically technologically determined, and where information and communication technology plays an important role in organization of production, what is the role of media? I mean, this is what we will be focusing on. We did not highlight this adequately in our unit. Today we have an expert from the Electronic Media Production Center of IGNOU, and he'll be giving us a presentation on the role of media in the post-industrial society. Well, what happens is the media in the industrial society basically is generates some kind of a mass culture where diversity of opinions and ideas are expressed. In the post-industrial society, this is what my reading of the situation is. I mean, from people like Mark Hughes and Noam Chomsky and so on, there is an attempt to coordinate the reality. There is an attempt to basically do away with the diversity of opinions and basically create some kind of a unanimity about the nature of reality which the post-industrial society is. What are the contours of this this construction of reality, and what are the contours of the dynamics operating behind this construction of reality? For this, we will turn to Ranjit. The discussion is going to be structured in this way. Ranjit will present for about 15 minutes, his presentation. And after that, we'll have a discussion, both of us. In between, during the discussion, you are free to intervene anytime, ask your questions, any queries, any comments. You're most welcome. I'll be announcing for this as we go along. But in the interim period, let's turn to Ranjit and see what he has to say about the media and the post-industrial society.
Thank you, Ajay. Let me first introduce you the term media, and because I feel that Ajay has introduced you the theme, but I have a problem with the way he has introduced, the way that I would look at media in the post-industrial society. I mean, it's not the entry point, but still I feel that there is an entry point that at the same time there is a homogenization happening on the one hand. On the other hand, there is a kind of diversification happening vis-a-vis the development of information communication technologies and all. So I feel that there is it will be important to look at or place the question in a historical context, and we need to understand it in the historicism of that even the genealogy of the term itself. So let me begin taking cues from Raymond Williams' keywords. That how do you look at the media? Perhaps the genealogy of term and how Raymond Williams tried to trace it. As you are aware, in keywords, Raymond Williams talks about medium as a medium. Historically, he's placing that, trying to trace the genealogy of the term media. He says that in a very even in the early 17th century, the term medium existed as a, what do you call it, as an intermediating agency. With the coming up of or emergence of newspapers in the it becomes quite the description of a newspaper as a medium of advertising became common in the 20th century with the printing technologies coming up, and with the emergence of broadcasting, media becomes commonly and widely used, and it's an important activity as part of communications as such, and as part of what to say, the terms like media, mass media, media people, media agencies, media studies, all those terms comes up with in the early in the 20th century itself. There are certain three ways to three homogenizing sense we can look at media. One is the old 17th century way of looking at media as an intermediating agency. Second is in a very technical sense. In a technical sense, when you, it's like print media, radio, television, in that very conscious technical sense. Third is the media as a capitalist practice, capitalist enterprise, as an industry, where you look at, where encounter things like, or you call it a capitalist enterprise like advertising, or it comes up like an industry. And you have media as various forms of practices as such. And in a very McLuhanesque, in a way Marshall McLuhan looks at, media is a technological, it's a kind of techno-deterministic way of looking at media as well. And there is a critique to that techno-deterministic way from culture studies perspective, and Raymond Williams will look at Theodor Adorno or Hockemeyer from the Frankfurt School would look at media as a cultural artifact or a culture industry. So this is the context in which we begin our discussion on
this media you're talking about is the media in the industrial society.
Basically, this is the what I tried was actually to look at media, the genealogy of the term, and how the term media itself, and it evolved in the history.
Right. Okay.
And that is how we can understand, or we can understand media. There are different ways of looking at media, as an intermediating agency, as a technical form, and then as a media practice as part of this media, capitalist media enterprise and industry. Okay. So that's what actually I thought it will be, to begin with, we need to understand those things. Okay. And the emergence of media happens in a society where some industrialization, urbanization in the 20th century, that process of urbanization or industrialization was happening. And along with that comes the concept of mass and mass society and mass culture. And it happens after the Second World War, and there was actually some kind of physical and social massing happening around the industrialized towns. So three processes that actually Raymond Williams mentions are the first is the concentration of population in industrial towns, the working class the emergence of working class there. Again, the concentration of workers into factories, people coming from villages and working in factories, and then the consequent development of an organized and self-organizing working class. Basically, Raymond Williams looks at from a Marxist point of view. But however, this is a context in which a mass society emerges, an industrialized society emerges, and this is a historical context in which transformation from a feudal system to a capitalist system happens at this time, that with modernities, as a modernities offering, media emerges as a main player. And this mass, what are the, maybe briefly we can just look at the nature of this mass as elucidated by these American scholars. They look at it as a large and aggregate, undifferentiated, and having a negative connotation, because mass is looked down upon, and it's inferior or lacking in order, and quite reflective of our mass society itself. But this perception of mass comes from a very dominant social and cultural values of the West, which have been quite individualistic, elitist, and unsupportive of any kind of a collective action. And therefore, even mass democracy has been looked down, and even mass culture has been looked down, and there is a high culture and class culture which has been treated at the high level, and the mass culture has been treated as the inferior. So Raymond Williams critiqued this kind of an approach by saying that there are no masses, there are only ways of seeing people as masses. So it's a kind of again a construction of the concept of mass, the process of othering. Perhaps we talk about in the postmodern context the othering of our stereotyping, that itself begins from that industrialized society or that period itself. And there you have a mass audience available, and heterogeneous, differentiated, different, addressing different groups, social groups, with different race, caste, and gender groups. I mean, this comes under this whole mass audience. And even with mediums, different kinds of mediums have different audience, radio, television, or print media. They have different, there are different audiences for this particular kinds of media forms. And again, this mass, actually, maybe just go briefly. This mass being looked at as a large number and widely dispersed and non-interactive and anonymous, heterogeneous, and not organized or self-acting in that sense. Here, even media use has been looked at in the context of this mass and mass culture and the coming up of this mass audience. Use of media has been looked at as quite a mass behavior. So this mass effect studies, mass media effect studies, mass culture studies, I mean that kind of research studies begin in this context. Again, it actually comes to the what to say, bring to another concept like mass culture, and it's been. I mean, again, I already mentioned that there is a mass culture versus a class culture and popular or high culture. That's kind of imagination happened or existed at that industrial society itself. Which in fact continues even in a different shade in the post-industrialized period as well. So I will just move on and probably to look at the industrial society. Probably whatever we have mentioning here was the context or the context of an industrial society only. Right. So again, if you look at this industrial society, the thrust areas of this industrial society were from what to say, an agriculture-based economy. Was that here the main thrust was economy, the manufacturing, and material goods produced at this point of time becomes more important. Even the mass media, when media becomes like a product, a mass product or mass media, even that mass comes there. Concept of mass comes as a as a large unit of production happening in factories, and working class coming in the context. In the working class, the physical and social massing of working class happens, and that constitutes the mass and mass culture and mass audience for the different publics for media itself. In the when you come to the post-industrialized society, the main thrust becomes the service, as you have early mentioned, and knowledge becomes, or information becomes a main service activity. The blue-collar job becomes, or what you say, the craze for blue-collar jobs or working class, changed to the white-collar, the service sector, and emergence of a middle class rather than the working class. Here the thrust is more on the middle class and their ethos. Then, if you take cues from American sociologist Daniel Bell, he employs the term called axial principle to denote the subterranean rationality that drives society forward. By axial principle, he means the primary principle that guides you to different patterns of rational thinking, or the main thrust of that thinking process that particular period. In the industrial period or industrial societies, that axial principle was economizing. And when you come to the post-industrialized society, the centrality of theoretical knowledge forms the axial principle. So from economy to the information-oriented, knowledge-oriented society happens. That is the main, characteristic, or what you can be seen in that shifting from an industrial society to a post-industrialized society. Again, there is a shift from manufacturing to services. In the beginning, there is a shift from agriculture to manufacturing in the factories, and then manufacturing to the service sector. And different kinds of services that are been available. It's been broadly classified into four, like the business services, public services, personal services, and entertainment and leisure services. Business services broadly include the transportation, the banking industry, insurance, professional and technical services available in the society. Public services include the welfare system, the law and order, health. Personal services, where you have the domestic, which includes the cooking and all those domestic activities, artisanal help at the level, and professional help. And our area of focus today's discussion is the fourth one, that is entertainment and leisure services. Where it comes to television, cinema, theme parks, then even the holidays, and even a post-industrial society is also looked at as a technitronic society. What do you mean by technitronic society? It's a society shaped culturally, psychologically, socially, and economically by the impact of technology and electronics. Electronics, particularly in the area of in the coming up of computers and different kinds of communications technology. Communications play a major role in this new age. And there is also a context in which this kind of shift happens. There is by the late 90s, there is an end of Cold War, and then there is a shift from industrial war to the what do you call the information war happening in this period. And the major wars in the Gulf War, and first and second Gulf War happens. And by the mid 90s, there is a television boom with this Gulf War, the CNN live telecast of Gulf War by CNN. And war become a kind of entertainment, some kind of reality show or a spectacle in Bourdieu's terms. And certain terms like embedded journalism, that's a contribution of even to say the Gulf War to journalism. Embedded journalism, where a journalist is attached to a military troop, and he or she will be reporting from the field itself. But the kind of biases involved in that process has been criticized severely. And with the new information and communication technologies, and with the kind of digital technologies available, with the coming up of internet, web technology, email, and lightweight recorders, it becomes quite, even the satellite phone and all, it becomes quite easy for media production process become quite easier, and this has helped the way media existed or media practiced in this post-industrial period. There is actually, I'm just quoting from how sociologist Bourdieu looked at television and journalism. It's in his famous essay on television and journalism, he looked at television as television, and I quote, television enjoys a de facto monopoly on what goes into the heads of a significant part of the population and what they think. Actually, mainly he's talking about a monopoly of television and the way television dramatizes various events, and and the kind of exaggeration it gave to the importance of a particular event, its seriousness, its dramatic, and even its tragedy. Even a tragedy has been celebrated, even a dramatized. Even a bomb blast has been dramatized, and it's been sold in a way as a reality show or a drama. So television, he was looking at that monopoly of television and that particular. Basically, it's there in the industrialized society as well. It continues even in a different form in the post-industrialized society. In the post-industrialized society, another aspect is that what information as knowledge becomes a commodity in this period, and news as information has become infotainment. The seriousness of the seriousness of news has lost in a post-industrial society, or the serious way with which news has been dealt in industrial society has been changed. Or you can have a critical way of looking at it, but still news becomes quite an infotainment rather than providing information to the presentation of news. The way it has become more important. The entertainment element dominates during this period. It's a kind of commodification happening as part of this post-industrialized society. By and large, media is a capitalized enterprise. Media emerges, or journalism emerges in history to address the needs of capitalism. Therefore, as Robin Jeffrey, the political scientist, puts it, media buys consumers from the mass audience to advertisers. They are buying consumers and selling it to the advertisers. In a Chomskyan sense, media also manufactures consent of the audience and guide them or guide them to certain directions, which may or may not be in the interest of the larger public. There is also an overemphasis on entertainment during this period. Media as a capitalist enterprise, but a kind of corporatization happens during this period. In the media houses, journalists are replaced by managers. It becomes a kind of a managerial job. And even media spaces are for sale. You can even buy media spaces, newspaper spaces, the front page space, or even the page 3. You can buy media spaces and you can use it in your own interest. So vested interests have actually percolated into the media space. That's one way of looking at it, obviously. And the construction of reality through media. As John Baudrillard looked at in the context of Gulf War, he said that television, in his opinion, television constituted America's reality. In fact, we should mention that a post-industrial society, when you talk about post-industrial society, you are looking at a very liberal, democratic society, developed society like America, by and large. So, in that context, he uses a concept like simulacra, where one could no longer differentiate between simulation and reality. So, Gulf War becomes a kind of reality for you. You sit in your home and look at CNN, the television screens, and you enjoy that war that is been constructed as a reality through television. There is also critique to such kind of an approach, that because you are looking down at a particular tragic incident, like a tragic happening like war, as a simulacra. But you are not looking at people there, you are just looking at a construction of this particular event called war as a reality show. So again, like a video game, you enjoy Gulf War, according to Baudrillard. As I have mentioned already, the information communication technology and development during this period has enhanced a kind of transnational communication flow. The flows are important in this period, and this kind of a flow, it's not a one-directional flow. It's two directional. It's in not from the west to the east. It's not, but it's happening over the years, over the centuries. You can say that there are flows of globalization of flow happening, and that communication flow happening. But the kind of transnational communication flow which happened during this period constituted some kind of a globalization of culture. And during this period, in the media front, there is a convergence happening with coming up of internet and all those new technology, forms of new media technology. And what I would like to say that what I said in the beginning that I would differ in with you in opinion is that with the post-industrialized, postmodern or information society, people have different options, diversified options. We are not looking at mainstream media, radio, television, or as sources of information or knowledge. We have different sources of information during this period. Like there are blogging, social networking sites, different online discussion groups, and then so there is actually a kind of diversification happening. That's a positive side I'm looking at. There is obviously what to say, the negative side, as you mentioned, is the kind of manufacturing of consent or coordination of reality and representation of reality in a particular framework, particular ideological framework happens, which obviously helps the corporatized or the monopolist capitalist, even in the post-industrialized society. Probably this is the entry point where we can even look at post-industrialized society in a wider perspective. Probably you can add more things and.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was an excellent presentation, I must say, and I confess I learned a lot.
That's the kind of discussion I thought, and even I feel that learners are sitting at the side, perhaps they also come up with a priori experiences of media. Right. They might have their own ways of looking at it, and probably
so this would be a good point to call in questions, and basically you're welcome to ask your questions to both Ranjit and me, and we'll in the interim period carry on a discussion. We have about 15 minutes to go, and so on. Yeah, I mean, I take your point about diversified options and so on and so forth. But the point is that this entire range of diversity is constructed around certain set parameters. Okay, this is what Marcuse, for example, Herbert Marcuse is an important thinker who writes about the post-industrial society, and this was the students, post-industrial societies, and he has got a book called One-Dimensional Man. Okay, so in that he has argued basically, I mean, in spite of this diversity of options being available to you, there is a constant. The constant is basically the frame which the technological universe defines for itself. Marcuse calls it a behaviorist universe. I mean, behaviorism is a phenomenon, again, for the students, which basically, to put it in a very simple manner, basically, at least in the knowledge production areas, basically believes that knowledge can be pre-packaged and given. I mean, let me put it very simply. That knowledge can be pre-packaged and given, and that basically the recipients are passive recipients of this knowledge. Okay, so I mean, it's basically this assumption which basically drives this universe forward. This is Marcuse's argument. Basically, therefore, because the frame is set up by behaviorism, it's much more. I mean, it's as easy as as feeding passive learners that this task take place. Actually, I mean, you might have diversity of opinions and everything happening. Yeah, but the overarching frame remains behaviorist. I mean, that's the point Marcuse, I was trying. Yeah, that's Marcuse. That is the point which he is driving towards. Okay. No matter what, I mean, no matter how many diversity of opinions you might have, okay, but the overarching frame remains. I mean, that is the guiding, he says that basically the ground for that universe is set by set by this technologically determined societies from 1940s or 50s onwards. Basically, that is the time from where Daniel Bell has started calling this society the post-industrial society. That is the ground which is set is carried on irrespective of the fact that number of opinions might emerge or number of options of expressing your opinions might emerge. Secondly, what Marcuse says is that basically social sciences, philosophy, other kind of subjects, all are brought in to basically justify and enhance the framework of this technologically determined universe. So that is the argument. I mean, it is in that sense that I'm saying
Okay.
that this kind of, I mean, that's why I'm talking about the homogeneity.
Homogenization. Okay.
Homogenization. So you might have a diversity of opinions in that, but the homogenizing frame goes on. Okay. So in the case of media, I mean, basically this is from the article which I took from you only.
Okay.
Basically, where media is kept in line, number one, by, I'll say for example, the television media. The statistics which Chomsky gives is that basically a limited number of families own media houses, whose social affiliations, social connections, political predilections all determine the nature of the content which this media offers. That's Chomsky's argument.
Yeah.
That's Chomsky's
The
argument.
Disney or Warner Brothers and all those.
Yeah.
That's it.
And secondly, what Chomsky talks about, I mean, which I was mentioning to you just now, was FLAC. Is the concept, is the whole situation of FLAC. FLAC is the unidirectional set of instructions which are positioned as power instructions, basically. I mean, they basically go out to the media, go out to the media magnates, or people, whoever are engaging in media, as instructions to be followed, because of, I mean, and which have a political kind of authoritarian political message behind it, that this has to be done. So, I mean, practices of this kind basically keeps this technological universe within firm control of the political powers that be. But this is the argument. It's in that sense that I was talking about.
What I was actually emphasizing is that when you look at media audience, initially, if you look at the media effect studies and all, media audience has been looked at as very quite passive, and media message could be in a very sender received that mathematical model. You can send media messages to the audience, and they are actually passive receivers of these messages. But over the years, there is a change in perception. Actually, we look at media audience as quite active, actively involved in negotiating with these kinds of media messages. So there is a kind of active selection happening. If you don't like this particular program, you can change the channel. Options are more now. Now, initially there was only, say for example, there is only Doordarshan, and you have only one option. You can even switch off the television set, but still that looking at the screen and while I mean the television set is on, you have no other option. Now you have more options. You can change the television channel. So one or you have even different kinds of niche channels available. If you can have Discovery, National Geographic, a sports channel, or a film channel, or a complete channel looks at religion and business, and that's all on and on. And most important part is the emergence of internet as a major player in this, and that kind of convergence of different forms of media happens, because there is print, there is television, there is radio, everything embedded within the particular form of media. That is a wonderful thing that has come out with the web and web technology. And with that, as perhaps what Habermas looked at public sphere, and other kind of public sphere happens or comes into existence in at least at a hypothetical level with the emergence of internet as a major media form, where you have the option of for example, now one kind of one incident happens. Say for example, you look at a newspaper, your initial reaction is to go and switch on the television set to get the immediate what's happening in there or here, any part of world. Another is to look at other forms of media, print or radio. Then you get the kind of set format. There is a set format because it's owned by certain monopolist corporate houses. You have a ideological framework within which the information has been packaged and given to you, or a kind of a coordination of reality happens at a particular ideological framework and provided or thrown at you as media messages. But with internet, there are other options available. You look at blogging, look at blogs, look at social networking sites, look at online discussion forums, and different other ways of, even with mobile technology, way you communicate, it's not the way you communicated early. You have SMSs sending, and different activisms are happening. Internet activism is a very prominent element of the, what to say, society itself. This happens, and this possibility of diversification, diversified media sphere, and the collapse of something called, maybe the grand narrative of media or meta narrative of such kind of discourse happens with this postmodern information, or we call it post-industrialized society. That is the aspect I was actually referring to. There is obviously that monopoly of the corporate houses, the rigid framework of media that exists. But now you have different options available as well. Even you become, as a citizen, you become a major player or major provider of information as such. That is the possibility which was not possible perhaps in a industrial society. But maybe in a different level it existed. You have your own ways of communicating. As people have, you have to become your own media to communicate when you can't depend upon a mainstream media. People have, even politicians have argued like that, even at the industrialized society as well. But now we have, what I was trying to argue is that we have more options available in this particular situation. So probably you can have a look at actually even how Chomsky is looking at flagging, and in this particular context, how it will be relevant, and how do you look at it? Maybe.
Yeah, I guess that's something which internet is again not a totally free medium. I mean, during the Olympic Games in China, the media sites were blocked. Basically, you are not out of the purview of the old censorship still operates.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the old censorship probably, as Chomsky has put it, has assumed this thing of form of FLAC, basically. Governmental agencies, governmental organizations, or organizations, private organizations linked to the government, they can initiate this process of FLAC very well. I mean, probably the medium might be internet, the medium might be television, might be anything. Through this FLAC, you control, basically. That's the thing. And that's, so there are these kind of ways of keeping this universe in order. Okay.
Yeah, that's there.
Okay, protest is out. I mean, for example, in the Olympic Games, during the Olympic Games in China, in spite of the Chinese having created a protest site, official protest site, okay, where protesters could officially go and protest. Nobody turned up for protest at those protest sites. Why? Obviously, there were other kinds of ways and means of control which were happening, or regulation which were happening, and they were effective. So it's, I mean, we need to, we need to get into the radical critique. I mean, what Marcuse outlined a couple of decades ago, I mean, I think certain aspects of it are still relevant.
Still relevant, yeah.
And what we need to actually see is, I guess any departure point of any radical critique of the post-industrial society, and which Marcuse made it out, because the radical critique basically was as to how that society is cut off from nature. Okay, the natural processes. He examines it in terms of how, say, romancing in a park, or the kind of things which were there in the earlier, where you actually connected to reality. Okay. Now, this basically all those experiences are then all undermined in certain senses. I mean, I'm not saying romance is over here or whatever, but he says the defining point is this disconnect with nature. Okay, which is basically instituted and by this technological universe, and then it is continuously justified in the whole process. Now, that could be a defining point probably for any radical critique.
Yeah, such a radical critique does, and it has its own relevance. Yeah, you are right that there is obviously censorship in various forms, or even that exists. I'm not denying that possibilities as such, but my argument in that sense was, still we have different options available. I'm not saying that there is no, there are spaces available in this particular universe, which was actually not perhaps available in this particular fashion. Perhaps it was available in a different fashion. People might have invented it in their own way, but it's available in a very what to say, as a media form itself, which was not earlier possible, perhaps. There are attempts to construct alternate media spaces from different groups and all. If you look at media, I mean, from that point of view, history of evolution of various even media houses itself, we can see certain kinds of social groups asserting their say, for example, needs or identities, and then that different social groups become successful in asserting it. Some other becomes not very successful in that sense. But in this particular context of this medium which I'm talking about, which is quite liberating and emancipatory to some extent, with a limited sphere, of a limited extent, the possibilities of utilizing what to say, communications, the process of communications to reach out to a larger public, a larger human universe, is available, which obviously has problems. As you have mentioned, you can a state can even block that site, ban even from blog sites were banned during some period. Even social networking sites, there are problems, and even there is an argument that some of the sites should be banned because some kind of free discussions happening there, which is, I mean, quite difficult to understand or assimilate for the authorities. Maybe it has its own interest to serve, and maybe there are some. But my point is here is that in the industrial society and the kind of what you call it, grand narrative of media or any kind of grand narrative, which is called the what to say the what is the narrative, the only narrative possible, that changes. There are different narratives possible in the post-industrialized society. That was probably I was actually trying to look at.
Yeah, take your point. I take yeah, that's something. Yeah, I mean. Those possibilities have definitely emerged, and in the sense that with the breakdown of the grand narrative, you have a situation where alternative, where you don't get immediately subsumed by the grand narrative. Let's say, I mean, that's the situation.
That may be
yeah. I mean, that's something which we were in the Cold War period. We were, or prior to that, we were completely bedazzled by. I mean, the sense that we were completely under the spell of these grand narratives. I mean, that situation is, of course, there. Yeah, but I guess the process of looking for a radical critique of the post-industrial society should be still kept
exists,
up.
yeah.
It should be kept up.
But I thought let's take a positive stand, and not unless why should we be pessimistic about transformation rather than a little bit optimistic about the possibilities and scope, still being radically critiquing that process.
Yeah, I mean, the possibilities within the whole situation should be explored, and of course that ground for optimism should be maintained, no doubt about it. And friends, we have now drawing to close this teleconferencing. We have had an excellent presentation by Ranjit on the nature of the differences between media in the industrial and the post-industrial society. And we ended up the discussion by actually talking about possibilities of critique and radical critique and so on. I guess we have to keep pushing for different possibilities. Yeah, the breakdown of the meta-narratives of the industrial age or the Enlightenment age was important for us to create more and more options. But then the radical critique of a society basically exposes you to the human possibilities or human potentials of your own existence. And that is what we need to build towards. So thank you very much. If you have any queries, questions, and so on, you can, I mean, we'll take them up. And probably in the next teleconferencing or so, we'll put up the numbers for facts and so on. That's possible. Yeah. With this, we draw to end this teleconferencing session. Thank you very much.
The crisis of our times, as we are slowly led to believe, is a crisis not of the hands, but of the hearts. So they say, isn't it? Well, friends, that's exactly what we are here to discuss. Concepts of modernity in today's youth. Welcome to our show, and I'm your host, Sonal Chawla. A lot is being said about the present generation. That's us. We are accused and labeled in